Guys, welcome back to Between the Ropes TV. As always, before we get started, make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel. Wow. What a fight we've just witnessed. It left me quite speechless seeing that knockout. Of course, guys, we were on about Conor Benn, who's just had probably the fight of his career, really, wouldn't you say, Josh? It was just an absolutely superb performance from him.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. I mean, this fight got announced. There was a lot of criticism about Algieri being 37 years old. He's not what he is, what he once was, sorry. But, he's a proven operator. He's been in there with Errol Spence, Manny Pacquiao, Amir Khan. And, what he's shown us, although he's lost in these fights, he's got up off the floor repeatedly. He's tough, brings something different. And I think it's something that, it was a necessary fight for Conor Benn because we're all getting excited about him. And I know we spoke on the channel previously about trying to rein it in and, remember, there's levels he needs to build properly. But with such an lack of amateur experience, he needed a fight like this. And, in fairness, the toughness didn't really matter, did it? I mean, what a sharp start from Benn. Straight away, he started well in the first round. Second round, he did get that knockdown scored for him, which I didn't think it was a knockdown. There's a bit of a leg tangle.
I agree.
There was a punch, but it connected to the back of the head. But still, I think that gave Ben a little bit of confidence because he came out of some really, really classy work in the third. There's a bit where he had him up the ropes and he really unloaded, didn't he? And he looked vicious. His footwork was on point and he looked very mature. I mean, his jab worked brilliantly tonight. I was really, really impressed with the jab. And then also, many times in boxing, we said about the simple things that they're the most effective. And it was just a signature 1-1-2 combination, wasn't it? For the stoppage. And it was vicious. And I will say, particularly after all the talk with Shiraz and Bradley Skeet last week, I was really happy to see the discipline of Conor Benn as he was going down. He was primed to hit him again and he didn't. And I love to see that after all the controversy last weekend. I thought that was brilliant that we saw that. So, I mean, mega impressed with Conor Benn.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, one thing that I was particularly impressed with and I thought was really good and people was, I feel people should really pick up on this. Algieri came in with a game plan, didn't he? We saw early on and it was working early on. He was actually using that left hook really well. Benn actually became educated to that. And of course, we saw for the knockout, it actually came from evading that left hook, seeing it coming, and then using that 1-2 to absolutely damaging effect. But, just to have that ring awareness and to be able to adjust and notice a game plan, I think that really shows how much he is coming on as a boxer. And we saw him, we saw also how good he looked defensively, not just his striking, but we saw him using that, the duck, the weaves. At times, even got an applause from the crowd. I think it might have been in the third round.
It was, yeah.
I mean, how impressed were you with the overall performance in general?
Massively impressed. I mean, like I said, this fight took some stick when it was announced, but personally, I was a fan of it. And I mean, obviously, I wasn't on the video for the preview earlier in the week with being a bit under the weather, but I really thought it was going to be a points win for Conor Benn or a late stoppage, possibly.
Yeah.
But to do what he did to Chris Algieri, and yes, critics will say it's not the Chris Algieri that was in with Pacquiao, Spence, Khan a few years ago. But still, when you weigh up all things equal, he's 25. That was his 20th pro fight. To go in and do that to a seasoned operator, and toughness was the one attribute that I think we all thought, it might even frustrate Benn because it isn't when you see a fighter can't get him out of there. And the patience that he showed tonight, because that's what we've seen lacking at times, at Headingley, against Granados. We saw him later on in the fight just waving him, come and fight me.
Yeah.
So he showed it was very mature tonight. And I think that's what, he's got a little baby. We all know that can change things for people. I think it's just a different side to him. And he's more of a man now. Tony Sims, hats off to him. He's done a brilliant job in the corner with him, and he really has. When you look back, I actually watched the other day Conor Benn's pro debut, and honestly, after watching that fight, to watching what we've just seen, okay, it's 5.5 years, but if you do, I think back to when I watched that live, you thought, God, he's just a gimmick. He'll make a few quid off his dad's name. So absolutely hats off to him for what he's done now. I mean, I think we've got to talk briefly about what's next, haven't we?
We have, and I think that's going to be interesting in itself. Obviously, I feel money is going to come into this as well. There's perhaps opponents that we might want to see, but from a money point of view, things might not weigh up. It was interesting, actually. dazn, I heard them talking a bit of a potential title fight. Look, I was really impressed with Conor Benn, but I don't feel that he's quite there yet, especially when you look at this division. Obviously, Terence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr., and obviously Ugas as well. They're three massive names. It's a really tough division. Joshua, am I right in saying that, someone like an Adrian Broner, maybe even a Jaron Ennis, like a big American name, if we can secure one of those, it might be a really good fight next. And of course, both of them kind of also come with the, people keep weighing in that he's fighting these people past the best. Well, these guys, I'd say, are still in their prime days. They're not towards the end of their careers.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not ready for a world title shot yet. I think this time next year. I mean, if I'm Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn, and the buck stops with me personally, I'd be looking at. I know there's the questions around the commercial value in the David Avanesian fight, made harder by the fact he signed with Frank Warren. That would be a fight I'd look at. So you've got Avanesian, Broner definitely, but Broner does just worry me with all his legal problems. He was a bit of a youth prodigy, if you like, wasn't he? Multi-weight world champion, had his legal issues the last few years, bit of inactivity. But if that fight can be made, I'd love to see it. The other one for me, the standout is, let's see how Brooke Khan goes in February. Get the winner. Let's see who the best welterweight in the UK is. I think that would make sense for all concerned. Brooke and Khan, I'm excited about it. I'm going to watch it, but it's about the payday. For the winner, you're not going to get another world title shot. So that's your next best payday, isn't it? Conor Benn, dazn will chuck a lot of money at that because they're building him to be the next cash cow. And then, the end of next year, could you be looking at a Virgil Ortiz, a Jaron Ennis? Those fights concern me. The welterweight is packed, like you say, and I do worry that they have too much right now. Are they unifications for 2 years down the line? Something, do you know what I mean? Because Crawford's not getting any younger. I'm not saying he's on the slide at all before we get bombarded. And same with Spence. Are they going to be looking at even moving up again? Who knows? But I think we still got to be patient, accept tonight for what it was, a fantastic performance. And, that's the fights for me. You've got Broner, Avanesian, Brooke and Khan winner. I'd like to see
on that. Obviously, I think, from the Brooke Khan thing, the only thing that people would probably throw at him again, taking on someone way past the prime. But it'd be a great payday, wouldn't it? And I think also it would maybe help build his fan base a bit more with maybe the casuals, if I'd use that word, to then go on to bigger and better things and really get that audience to then start maybe opening up to the bigger arenas as well. And I think as well, obviously you spoke about the Americans, Broner, for example. I think that would also be a really good route, start opening up his name a bit more in the US. And as we spoke about, from a US point of view as well, it's a really packed division, isn't it, from a US point of view? Let's move on. Katie Taylor, obviously successful today. Everyone had their eyes on the Serrano fight. I think maybe for a little bit, myself included, I'll put my hands up. But it wasn't an easy fight for her, was it, tonight? And I think we saw a really impressive performance from Sharipova. What did you make of it?
I agree. It almost was a little bit AJ Ruiz-esque, wasn't it? Because all the talk all week, as Joshua had it about Wilder, all the talk was about Amanda Serrano, particularly with Serrano fighting on the Jake Paul undercard next week. But we'll talk about that crap on Monday. So, I think she's done really well. It's like it's a banana skin avoided. I mean, I saw, Sharipova giving her the football yesterday at the weigh-in. At times, almost like paying homage to Katie Taylor. And while I appreciate, Taylor has, a lot of these women that she's fighting are getting career high paydays by fighting Katie Taylor. She's probably certainly in the UK, but probably worldwide, the face of women's boxing, certainly up there with the likes of Shields and Serrano. It's a mind game, and, can it make you soft? So I thought, I was a little bit worried. I know we spoke earlier, didn't we? I said I'm a little bit worried about this. And Sharipova came into it. She went for it, didn't she?
Yeah.
Was she a bit one-dimensional at times? For me, she was.
Yeah, I agree.
Her tactics got a little bit sort of samey. So, and I think, but, through 4 rounds, I agree with, I think it was Darren Barker's scorecard. I thought 2-2. And I thought, we're in for a fight here. And then, in fairness to Katie Taylor, she started using her jab a little bit more. Then, obviously, we got to the 6th round, and Sharipova had a point took off her, didn't she, for hitting on the break. And I thought that was quite a key, because I think that made Sharipova not panic, but she tried to force it a little bit more.
Had to go for it.
Yeah, and that enabled Taylor to work off the jab a bit more. So that enabled her to pull out her lead then on the scorecards. So it was necessary. She obviously picked up the win. In fairness to Sharipova, she was tough off head clashes. She had a bit of damage around the right eye. I think there was a nick above and below the eye, wasn't there, in the end?
Yeah, there was. Yeah.
But no, necessary from Katie Taylor. No cuts, no injuries. So they talked about it afterwards. April, Madison Square Garden, the Serrano fight, providing Serrano does her bit next week. And I don't just think it's the biggest fight in women's boxing. For me, it's one of the biggest fights in boxing, full stop. I am so excited about that fight.
It's going to be a spectacle, and I think it'll be one of those that we'll see a big probably a free fighter, to be honest. Going back to tonight's fight, though, obviously we spoke about the point deduction. I do wonder, obviously, the head, we talked about the cuts that Sharipova got. Of course, they weren't, I don't think at least one of them wasn't from, what Katie Taylor actually did. It was more from that clash of heads in the round before. Do you think that maybe rattled her a little bit and possibly led to that in the 6th round? Because we did see her get a bit frustrated as there seemed to be another coming together. And of course, it was the elbow used, which got her that point deducted. Do you reckon that kind of 5th round kind of clash of heads had a bit of an impact on that? And do you think that had an overall impact on possibly how the result gone, or do you still think it would have gone the same way?
I think it would have still gone the same way, purely because Sharipova, first world title fight, a little bit of an unknown quantity. In fairness to Taylor, although I think that was her 20th pro fight off the top of my head, she's been there, she's done it. She's dug deep against Delphine Persoon, against Natasha Jonas. So she's been there. She's not going to have been phased. And I think that was the difference. What you're just talking about there with the bit of frustration, maybe Sharipova was actually phased. Do you know what I mean? The occasion got to her. It was quite sort of fan friendly how she tried to approach the fight initially. Then again in the 10th round, she really went for it, in fairness to her. But I just think that Taylor's class would have shone through. The one thing that I would say, and I'm a massive Katie Taylor fan, she needs to step it up for the Serrano fight. Her last 2 fights, got to be honest, her hand speed is incredible, but she wants to fight too much. And while as fans, it's a fan-friendly style, we love to see it. At the same time, when you can box like Katie Taylor, don't fight you could see Sharipova wanted a war. Don't give it to her. Just keep her at range, because as soon as you were behind the jab, it was working, and she was clocking rounds, wasn't she? For me, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was one thing that was clear at the very start. She wasn't perhaps keeping her at range, and I think she became mindful of that, didn't she? Of course, then kept her at a bit more distance, and I think that's really what had the impact on that. Obviously Taylor getting that win. Of course, we will hopefully see Taylor versus Serrano in 2022. Can't believe we're already nearly in 2022, but there we go. And of course, there were other fights. Cordina. An interesting one, Josh. We'll cover the other 3 fights now, but we want to cover. But Cordina, it was a bit of he got over the line. I think there will be a lot of lessons learned, from that fight. But I think it was quite a static performance, wasn't it? And I feel that the boxing fans, from what I was seeing, weren't really impressed with that performance. And I have to agree with them. I was hoping for a bit more from him.
I totally agree. He had to work hard tonight. I think it was 10 valuable rounds for him that he probably needed, because 2020 was an injury nightmare for him.
Yeah.
Obviously, he came back in March, got the win, and then against Hernandez at Fight Camp, that sort of one punch knockout, which we've not seen from him yet, and it was a fantastic punch. It really was, probably the punch of his career. But I think at times tonight it was almost like he went looking for that same one punch, particularly sort of as the fight wore on. And he had control after 3 rounds. I'm not even going to attempt to say the guy's name. I'm going to do exactly what dazn did and call him the Belgian.
Yeah, I think we did the exact same actually on the preview, me and Ben.
Yeah, so I mean, I think after 3 rounds, it was like the Belgian knew he couldn't win. And I don't want to say he went in to survive because he did try in flashes, but definitely not more than that. But having said all that, Cordina, it's on to a big 2022. I think one thing that it has highlighted for us, people talking about world title fight next. Personally, I'd like to see him have one more before. Don't ask me about the matchmaking because it's really hard. It's a division that's a bit all over the place, super feather. But yeah, I think he needs one more before he goes for a world title. But no, I think necessary rounds for him tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, obviously, as we said, definitely lessons learned. Josh, there was 2 more fights that we wanted to quickly cover. Obviously, Peter McGrail in action and Robbie Davies Jr. What did you make of both of those fights?
Well, Peter McGrail, second round TKO, wasn't it? The ref waved it off against Angel Gomez. And he boxed well, sustained a small little nick, which is a little bit of a concern. And they're talking about his nickname, like Peterchenko, obviously Lomachenko. He's a severely talented amateur with a big pedigree. And, I think when he fought on the October the 9th card in Liverpool, I remember I am very excited about him, what he can do, particularly in that super bantamweight division, because, there's room there. I think he can be moved quite quickly. And I know Tony Bellew and Andy Lee were talking about that after, certainly by 7 fights, we need to be seeing him in with some serious operators. But, last time it was a points win, another 6-rounder tonight. Good to see him get the stoppage. Gomez is no mug. I think it was 8 wins, 3 losses and 4 knockout wins before tonight. So that's a positive. So no, I think he said he wants to be out quickly. We want to see him out quickly. And then quickly on to Robbie Davies Jr., because this man's had a little bit of a roller coaster the last few years. Obviously sustained losses when he has stepped up to the the European level with Ritz and he's had a few issues with trainers. He was at the Ingle gym. He's moved around a little bit, but this year he's gone with Shane McGuigan, and I'm a massive fan of Shane McGuigan's. What he's done, cruiserweight, he's got the scene locked up, hasn't he, with Billam Smith and Okoli. He's doing good things with Daniel Dubois from what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
Be very interested to see what he does next. And then, Robbie Davies Jr., Hank Lundy tonight. Yes, he's older. Yes, he's not what he was. But, the fact that Zepeda had to go the distance with him this year tells me that how impressive that was off Robbie Davies Jr. And, and it was a vicious knockout as well, wasn't it? It wasn't one of these questionable knockouts or bit tame referee stoppage. That was a vicious performance. He showed patience. Could have done it in the first round, but he showed a little bit of patience, did it in the second, and that's got to be so rewarding. And I liked how chilled out he was afterwards. And he just said, if Shane says we're ready for that step up next, we're ready for that step up. And I agreed with Shane McGuigan. I think 1 or 2 more. Josh Taylor will probably go up to 147. And, if they play their cards right here, Robbie Davies Jr. in the summer next year could be fighting for a vacant world title, couldn't he?
Yeah, and of course that would be a massive fight for him. Josh, of course, you vaguely mentioned Lomachenko, and I'll quickly tie that in because, guys, if you're watching this on Saturday night, we'll be doing a reaction to that in the Sunday morning, UK time. And if it is Sunday, there's probably already a Lomachenko reaction. Of course, he is fighting Richard Comey tonight. And, guys, so make sure to check that one out as well. Also, make sure to like, subscribe, and we shall see you on the next video. Goodbye.